Hello, hello, hello. My name is Sajay, and welcome to Advance's Amplify virtual interview series. Advance acknowledges that we in Toronto, where this organization was founded, of course, are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Advance was formed to develop an infrastructure for the betterment, upliftment, and retention of Black talent in the Canadian music business. The Amplify series highlights exceptional Black professionals in the Canadian music industry, like my guest here, and shares their stories and many experiences. So, our goal for you is to leave with a greater appreciation of our guests because each individual has made a significant difference. So, that being said, I would like to introduce you to my guest today, A. Harmony, who is a music journalist, cultural critic, and MC with words in Exclaim Magazine, CBC, and Bustle. She's also a frequent commentator on the Q This Music panel on CBC Radio 1, and she's actually also the interim host of CBC's great R&B show, Marvin's Room. So thanks for talking to us today, A. Harmony.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to know, the first thing I wanted to know was, when did you know that you just had to work in music?
Oh gosh, it's gonna sound really cliche, but like from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a singer and I always loved music. Like that is the cliche answer that every artist and every person that kind of works in the industry gives, but it's true. From the time I was a little kid, I used to want to perform. And just always knew I wanted to be involved in music somehow. So I can't think of like a defining moment. It's from the time I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's definitely lots of people's pull to it. So you have a bit of an unconventional, I would say, career path with respect to music journalism and cultural criticism. So talk to me about kind of how you got started.
Yeah. So I kind of mark the beginning as 2007. I was in university at that time. MySpace was a thing at that time, and I had started blogging before I knew what blogging was on MySpace. I just kind of started this like I forgot what it was called, but it was me kind of scouring MySpace and finding some indie artists on MySpace who had some music available that I really liked and writing about it. Writing was always something that I enjoyed doing. High school, wrote a lot of short stories and was in competitions and blah, 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 that kind of thing. So that skill was always there. Music was always something that I loved. And this was a way for me to kind of combine the two. So yeah, I started off on MySpace blogging. I was always into music as well. And like I said, wanted to perform. So MySpace was also where I started stretching my skill set in that area. I started off singing a lot of terrible hooks, writing a lot of terrible hooks for MySpace rappers, and kind of did those two things in tandem. Eventually, so with the singing alone and the rapping and stuff, it was kind of a winding road in itself. But one of the terrible rappers that I wrote like a trash hook for was like, oh, I was joking around one day and kind of did a freestyle with him, like as a joke. And he was like, that was pretty good. You should consider rapping and like taking it seriously. And I was like, it's never something that I thought it's never something I saw myself doing, but I was like, why not? Because I was getting to a point where I'm like, okay, can't really sing. My songs are off key. This is before like Janae Aiko was a thing and like that whisper singing was in.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is the lane for me. So rapping might be it because you can kind of talk over the record. So started rapping and kind of just never stopped doing both. The kind of like culmination of the rap side of things was coming out with a collaboration album with Phoenix Pagliacci, who's now in Trippy, and Deja SB, who is now taken off. We did a collaboration album in 2016. And after that experience, like I enjoyed it a lot. But I was like, the front facing stuff, the public facing stuff about being an artist is not for me. So I think writing about it is where I'm going to stick. So right after releasing that album, I got my first review at Exclaim. And I've just kind of been there ever since. And then the radio thing, it was like, so me being a journalist, writing for all of these different publications, Exclaim being the first one, and CBC and Bustle and A.Side and all of those publications. CBC needed expert commentary on something music related. I think it was like a battle rap the art of battle rap. They wanted me to speak about it, and that kind of led into the radio thing. So radio is where I am right now, radio and journalism. But yes, it was a winding road and an unconventional path for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's like people watching that are gonna be like, "What is MySpace?" Because they're like
I know.
too young
Well,
to remember.
back in the day, kids,
I know.
MySpace was like, I know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was, I guess, I wouldn't say Facebook before, because Facebook was a thing when MySpace was a thing, but I don't know. It was a platform.
It's
Before
fine.
we had everything we have now, MySpace was the place to be. I'm dating myself for sure.
No, it's true. It
As
was
I
the
say
genesis.
that.
It was the genesis for sure of like
Yeah.
social media music discovery. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What were some of like your, professional obstacles, particularly with respect to your gender or your race, that you had to overcome kind of in the music media space or music in general?
Yeah. So I went to the Harris Institute for the Arts, I want to say 2010, 2011-ish. And the first thing, so before you even get into the school, they kind of sit you down with the program director and they have a talk with you and try to figure out how serious you are about entering the music business. Are you in it because you think like you have stars in your eyes and you think it's going to be this big glamorous experience, or are you really into this? And so program director sat me down and he said, "What do you see yourself doing? Like, why do you even want to come to this program? What do you want to do in the future?" And I said, "I want to be an A&R." And he looked me squarely in the face, this old white man, and he said, "Well, there's only 3 A&Rs in this country who are actually making a living that they can live on, and they're all men and they're all white. So no room for you there. What are you going to do now?" And your face was exactly my face. I was like, okay, well, then I guess we're going to have to think of another path. I'm really grateful for that conversation. And it's not to say that he deterred me from, being interested in A&R. Once I learned what A&R meant, I realized I didn't really want to be that. People think it's like, oh, artist discovery, and it's so cool. But A&Rs are really bankers that just kind of manage the process of making an album from start to finish. And it's not as fun, at least for me, as I thought. So I did change my mind career-wise because of that. But I'm always grateful for that conversation because it just let me know what I'd be up against in the industry. It's been interesting, especially in the hip hop space, especially when I was performing and I was a rapper and wasn't really behind the scenes, being taken seriously. There can be sexual harassment. There's a lot of people who underestimate you and think, oh, well, she's just a pretty face, or she's just a groupie hanging behind the scenes and that kind of thing. So you constantly have that hanging over your head. And I feel like you kind of have to prove yourself twice as much. As I've moved up in my career and I start to work in other areas of the music industry, it's incredibly white. And you have that kind of hanging against you as well. People with their preconceived notions about the quality of the work that you can do, your knowledge of different music that's not necessarily Black music, all of that comes into play. So none of it has deterred me, but it hasn't been easy either.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something. Did you have any mentors like kind of during any of these things?
In different areas. So again, I kind of pivoted from like performing to writing and now into radio. And I've met people along the way who've kind of offered me really valuable advice and just helped me through. All of my teachers at Harris, their advice, and just even the same program director who looked me squarely in the face and said, like, this is not the industry for you. It wasn't him trying to deter me. It was really him just, supporting me and letting me know what I was up against. So all of my teachers at Harris gave me great advice that I still employ. In the media side of things, or in the performing side of things, I think of like Julie Black, I think of like Nishimi and Mel Boogie, and just how receptive those people were. DJ Bizarro out in New York, he was also really instrumental. He gave me a lot of great advice and was like a big brother who kind of ushered me through the performance side of things, especially because dealing with men in hip hop can be tricky and sometimes dangerous. He was really like a protective big brother. In terms of radio and media, Amanda Paris, who is the host of Marvin's Room, has been instrumental, and not just with helping me with Marvin's Room, but she lobbed my first CBCQ opportunity as well. So she really helped get me in the door. Ty Harper has been instrumental in both my performing career and my radio career. He was a huge champion of Hometown Herberts, the album that I released with Phoenix and Deja. And even now in the radio side of things, always there to lend an ear, always there to offer advice, always there to give me tips on how to get better, always available to listen to me kind of rant or ask questions, even if they might be stupid questions. And he's been going hard since the very beginning. So yeah, different people. I've met different people at different parts of my journey who really helped me along.
I love that. That's really dope. What, within any of those experiences, or like maybe it was like a piece of advice that you got from one of these mentors, what was kind of like your game changing or moment, and where were you? Like a light bulb moment.
Like a game changing piece of advice, or just a moment in my career where I was like,
either one, like whether it was a word someone said or something that happened that was just kind of like an aha moment for you.
Yeah. So especially in music, and I'm sure you can attest to this, the side hustle is a big thing. Like a lot of people working in music, that is not their main gig.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, I was kind of up against, my family not really taking the music thing seriously, just in general, whether it's journalism or performing or whatever. It was always like, get a real job and go to a real school. Like I even had that argument with my mom when I wanted to go to Harris. It was like, no, you're going to university and getting a degree. Music is not a real job.
Mm-hmm.
She only started acknowledging that what I do is actually legit when I got CBC, because that's a network she knows. So now she's like, okay, you're not ashamed to the family. I can tell people about what you're doing. But there did come a time in my career where I kind of had to make a decision as to like what I wanted my life to look like. And do I want to keep working jobs that don't necessarily fulfill me or satisfy me, or do I want to go after this? And long story short, I was in a bit of financial trouble. I owed my mom some money and I had to pick up another job, and had the opportunity to go door to door doing the census and kind of offering surveys to people. And you shaking your head, that was exactly how I felt about it. I'm like, look, I know I need this money, and I know this is probably the right thing to do based on what people tell me, but I just don't want to do this. So I had interviewed with them. I got the position. And when it came time to accept the offer, I called them and I'm like, you know what? I can't do this. Like it may sound like the wrong thing to do. And I know I'm in a hole financially and I need some money, but I can't do this. And literally 2 days later, I got my first paid article with Exclaim. And it was at the time, it was like a huge artist that I had always wanted to write about. And for me, that was like, okay, go in the direction of what you want and doors will open up exactly when you need them to. That was a huge moment for me, just in terms of like, be deliberate with the direction that you go in and with your intentions, and things will open up exactly when you need them to. So yeah, it was a hippy dippy aha moment.
I really love that though. Who was the artist that you got?
It was Schoolboy Q.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Who was one of your biggest inspirations for getting into the music business?
So funny enough, piggybacking on Schoolboy Q, Kendrick Lamar, in terms of writing. So when I was at Harris, one of my friends out there, Tate Garrett, who's still a producer now, and like shout out to Tate, he put me on to Kendrick Lamar. And I just remember listening to him and feeling so at home with everything that I heard. He was the first artist that I heard that gave me the same feeling I used to get when Jay-Z used to come out with an album in the summer, or like Biggie, listening to Biggie for the first time. Like Kendrick awakened that feeling in me. That was around the time, like this was, blog era. There was like a dearth of women in hip hop at that time, and hip hop was kind of experiencing this lull. And he was the first person I felt who kind of woke me up. And the thing that kind of pushed me into writing was, one day I want to write either his, like co-write his biography with him on like what's the book Jay-Z did with Dream Hampton? Name is completely Decoded.
Decoded, yeah.
I was like, I either want to co-write his biography with him on some Decoded, or like do a really beautiful feature well in like a glossy magazine that just talks all about him. So that was the thing that got me into it. Every article that I write, every artist that I cover, it's all kind of, that is the end goal. That is everyone is kind of leading me to that, or so I tell myself.
Yeah, I love that. And it's kind of like goes into my next question, because you mentioned this, because that time when everyone was discovering Kendrick would have been like 2010, I would say even 2009. So like, how have you seen the industry change from maybe that point
Oh my
until
gosh.
now?
It has, so this is like a theory that I have. 2011 in particular was transformative in just the creative space in general. If you go back to like 2010, 2011-ish, that was when The Weeknd was releasing things quietly on the internet. Kendrick had self-released Section 80, and I remember him being on Ustream, which is another old platform that nobody remembers. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the precursor to Instagram Live. For the kids who have
Hmm.
no idea what I'm talking about. And he had self-released and was like on Ustream doing a listening party with everybody. Issa Rae had Awkward Black Girl on YouTube at the time. And if you look at where all of them are now, Kendrick has a Pulitzer, and Issa Rae is like, she basically owns HBO, and The
Yep.
Weeknd is The Weeknd now. Like, he did Super Bowl and got all these Junos and things. And 2011 was where it all started. It was the foundational time. I would even go back a couple years to like when Drake was really starting to rise, and like Toronto music was starting to change and that kind of thing. Those years were instrumental, and the industry has changed in so many ways since then. This entire like direct to consumer marketing with, streaming services and artists kind of using social media to build their platforms, none of this was a thing 10 years ago, not to this degree.
Yeah.
So transformative. The industry has changed in so many ways, in a lot of great ways, I think.
Hmm. How do you see that change continuing in the near future?
Yeah. One thing I'm really excited about is music as a whole seems to be a lot more inclusive than it's ever been, at least from what I can remember. We have different types of music because of the fact that streaming allows for this niche market or a direct to consumer market where I don't have to like what the big labels are telling me to like. I can like this obscure, like folk, polka, hip hop fusion, and there's a space for me there. So I like that it's a lot more exclusive just in terms of the content that we're hearing, the types of artists that we're seeing get platforms, the type of music that's being made, and the fact that the lines between genres keep blurring. It's opened up a whole new world creatively. So I'm really excited. I think that's going to continue, and we'll see more variety and more inclusivity than we ever have seen. I'm really
Yeah,
excited about that.
absolutely. I kind of want to hear what like folk polka hip hop would sound like just like just like a
there
vague
there
idea.
is there is definitely a folk polka hip hop artist out there
It has
who's
to
got like
exist.
3 fans right now, but next year they're gonna be all the rage. That's gonna be the new thing.
They're out of here. They're out of here.
Exactly.
Um, what would you like to see change? Specifically with Canadian music and specifically, but in general, in the music industry in general as well.
Yeah. I think we're on our way there, but we're not quite there yet in terms of music spaces being a little safer for the other. And that could be anything, women or Black people or people from the LGBTQ2+ community. Like, there are lots of different communities that are being ushered in and being welcomed a little bit more, but I think we still have a little ways to go. So I'd like to see that continue to a higher degree. And in terms of the Canadian industry, again, I think we're on the way there and we've made great strides, especially in the past decade. But I would like to see us kind of finally shake off the residual kind of little brother syndrome, like, oh, we're the little man compared to the US, and just that like low self-esteem that's kind of embedded into Canadian culture. I'd like to see us shake that off once and for all. We are almost there. We've made great strides in the past 10 years or so, but I still see a little bit of like imposter syndrome or just like this kind of low self-esteem podunk, like, oh, poor little Canadian. And I feel like we're almost there. Let's like stand firmly in who we are and be proud of the work that comes out of this country.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes perfectly into my next question, where I think the elephant in the room with a lot of Black creatives or Black media folks in Canada is this idea that you have to move away, specifically moving to the United States, to make it or to build a career for yourself. Do you feel like that's still the case?
So it's going to sound completely like hypocritical based on the answer I just gave. But yeah, I think it's true. You still got to leave. And you even look at the artists who are succeeding. A lot of them either had to leave or get their cosign elsewhere before they started popping off or blowing up here. A lot of the Juno winners this year have been making moves for a while in the US
Mm-hmm.
and are finally getting the recognition that they need over here. So unfortunately, yeah, it is true. Not just from a recognition standpoint, but also for the money. What I am doing over here, hosting a nationally broadcast radio show for the public broadcaster, I'd be making way more in the US. And that same goes for the articles that I write, all the work that I do here, I'd be paid a lot more for it in the US. And that's partly just because there are so many more people there and the market is bigger and the population is bigger, and that means there's more money to go around. So yeah, it's true that leaving and coming back might not be the worst thing if you want to broaden your platform. And it just is what it is. Like, it might sound hypocritical based on what I just said about, oh, Canada being like, we gotta be prouder of ourselves, but like, it is what it is. We're not there yet, and they got more money than we do.
Can't argue with that. So kind of want to shift gears a bit, but a year ago, a lot of companies and organizations, pledged to make these different steps towards addressing racism and the lack of Black people that they have within their own industries, within their own companies. Throwing up the Black Square was June 2nd of last year. Do you feel like the Canadian music industry has made any legitimate steps towards any of that?
I haven't seen them personally. I have seen and heard a lot of lip service, and I've seen a lot of, we're reflecting and we're gonna sit and think about this, and
Listening and learning.
Yeah, listening and learning. Oh my gosh, that is the go-to PR line. We're gonna listen and we're gonna learn, and all it means is we're gonna buy ourselves time until y'all forget, and then we're going to go right back to the status quo. I think there are some concrete changes that can be made right now, like getting Black people into positions of power, or just non-white people basically in positions of power, decision-making tables, and putting them in positions where by virtue of their titles or by virtue of their positions within these companies, their opinions are taken seriously. Because I think a lot of companies think having Black people there at all means they're diverse and it's diversity. But when you look at hierarchies and org charts and see who these people are reporting to, it gets whiter and more male the higher up the chain you go. And if those are the people at the top making the decisions, it doesn't have a trickle down effect. Like, that is not going to help the organization in any way. You need people at the top or in decision making positions who can offer a different perspective. I've seen a lot of, just in general, like tweets and panels and things like that, where it's like, I can tell you had no Black people or no non-white people involved in this. No non-white people advised you on this or helped you push the button or read this over before you publish. Like, it always shows. So I've seen a lot of lip service. That's only my experience. Maybe there have been changes that I'm unaware of, but I haven't seen it. I've seen a lot of talking and not a lot of action on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned you talked a little bit about the Junos earlier, and you moderated 2 really great conversations with some award winners like Savannah Ray. Shout out to Savannah Ray. Oh my gosh. Wonder Girl, Murder Beats. What and who excites you kind of about where Canadian music is at the moment?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it earlier that I think we are finally coming out of the like little brother syndrome, or this little like, oh, we're just Canadian. Like, I think I'm starting to see that pride a lot more in the music and just in terms of representing home wherever we go. I think we have come a long way in terms of establishing ourselves as a force to be reckoned with on the global stage, which I'm really proud of. I'm super proud and excited about artists like Savannah Ray. Dylan Sinclair, I'm super excited about. I love everything I've heard from him so far. Jessie Reyes, I get so excited every time I see her do something new. Wonder Girl as well has been making huge strides, and her beats are like, she dominates every arena that she's in, kind of thing. So I'm super excited about where we're headed, just in terms of shaking off that old identity that we had and really coming into our own. And I'm super excited about the new music coming out of here.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you mentioned Deja SB earlier. She's
Yeah.
Out of here. I
Yeah.
don't know if you
Deja
saw
has made
I Go
huge
by
moves.
Lou. She like went viral. SZA
Yeah.
posted her song. Like
Deja has a huge following in Brazil, which is like so exciting to me. They
yeah,
love Deja out in Brazil. And
yeah.
it's so I've been, rocking with them since I'd met Deja when they were like 16, 15 or 16. And
Wow.
we've been rocking with each other ever since. And it's been so gratifying. And just as their friend, it's just been so good to see that journey. Cause I was there from the beginning and there from the
Yep.
times where they were like, you know what, Harms, like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna make it. Like, I don't know if this is for me. Like it's taken too long and blah, blah, blah. And just seeing their trajectory now and seeing their star take off and being able to say, like, I knew it, like I knew you were going to get to this place, and seeing them be able to enjoy that is so gratifying. So yeah, really excited about Deja.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. What you mentioned that your first story was that kind of set you on this path a little was Schoolboy Q, but what was your most memorable interviewer story?
Oh dear. Schoolboy was pretty memorable. A lot of things about that one were memorable. We had one interview date set up, and then I can't remember why they had to cancel it. Something about a flight or something. He couldn't make it to Toronto, and they canceled all his press. And I was so devastated because I was so excited to do that interview. It was going to be in person. I was super excited about it. They canceled it, but then out of the blue, so this was 2 days after I turned down that job. Out of the blue, the label hit us up like, hey, Schoolboy feels so bad about canceling all his press. He's going to come back to Toronto just to do the press. He'd come out here to do a show, and he'd done the show. I think
Wow.
his flight was late. He had a press, so he was going to do a press junket all morning and then do the show. His
Yeah.
flight was late. He had to come in and just do the show, had to cancel all the press. So we thought, okay, we missed the opportunity. But he felt so bad that he came back just to do all the press that he canceled. And so that one was hilarious. It was at his hotel room in downtown Toronto. I had to take like a half day, I think, at work to get the interview done.
That's funny.
We were in the elevator, and I remember he looks around and he's like, I'm the shortest person in here because I'm pretty tall and he is not. So he was like looking up at me and all the security and everybody from the label, like, I'm the shortest person in this elevator, blah, blah, blah. We get to the room now. It's like 30 people in there, and me with my little recorder. The label rep is kind of standing in the corner, and all 30 people are just watching me. And it's my first interview, basically, like my first in-person,
Oh
like
my
my
gosh.
biggest interview at the time. I'm petrified. I have my recorder there.
No
I'm sitting
pressure.
next to him. Exactly. He had already done maybe like 4 or 5 interviews before me, and the label rep had warned me, oh, he hates doing interviews and he's in a really bad mood right now because the last few interviews they were asking questions he didn't want to answer, so just warning you that he's probably not going to be in the greatest mood. I was like, thanks
Oh my
for that.
gosh.
And so we're sitting down, I'm petrified. There's like 30 people watching me, and I can't even remember what I like to get artists talking about something that's like not music related just to warm them up and have us have an organic conversation. And I can't remember what I said, but we ended up having a great interview. It felt like it was just the two of us in the room.
I love
After
that.
the interview, the label rep was like, he was cranky all day. That's the best I've ever seen him. Like he warmed up to you. He gave me more time than what we were allotted because he was just enjoying the conversation. I then had to sneak back into my office smelling of smoke, which at the time wasn't legal, the type of smoke that I smelled like. So that was fun. I had locks at the time too, and walked back into the office smelling like a walking stereotype. So that was fun. But
Oh my
the
gosh.
story turned out really well. And it still remains one of my favorite interviews. He's like super nice. Gave us a great interview. He put me at ease despite the amount of people that were sitting there. It was a really good one.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really, really love that. On the flip side, obviously journalists don't always have great days, but is there a moment that you would do over in your career? What would
Oh
it be?
my gosh. Absolutely. And I'll never forget this. I will kick myself forever. So Nipsey Hussle, I was reviewing Victory Lap for Exclaim, and we were also going to have an interview with him. And through, like, it was nobody's true fault, but because he was on West Coast time and we were on East Coast time, we got the interview times messed up. So I had it in my calendar for, let's say, 2 p.m. Eastern, which ended up being the wrong time. I was in a meeting when the label rep called. I came back to my phone. I don't really carry my phone with me in meetings or anything like that. Came back to 6 missed calls. And I was like, well, that's not good. Check the number, don't recognize the number. Check my voicemail, and it was, hey, it's Nipsey Hussle calling. And I was like, no, I called the number back. I tried everything. We tried rescheduling, couldn't get him because he was doing Breakfast Club in New York the next day.
Wow.
And I kicked myself. I had all these questions ready. I was going to ask him about, investing in cryptocurrency and all the business endeavors he was doing. The last line of the review for Victory Lap was, it was something along the lines of like, this is really great, but it's not the best that he can do. And he's got so much time ahead, or like, it was something speaking about his potential. And we never did get that interview. I'm like gonna well up. It remains my biggest regret for a lot of like echoes in my mind often, because that would have been a great conversation. And I think we were in the works to reschedule, but obviously we weren't able. So that remains my biggest regret.
Damn. He is another one that seemed like he would have been like very open, very
Absolutely.
like.
I was so excited to do that interview because it wasn't going to be about music at all. I was going to talk about his business endeavors. He had as we all know, he just bought the block, and Marathon Store was doing what it did. And that was going to be, I was really excited, especially about crypto, because it wasn't what it is now when I was going to talk to him. And everything with like NFTs and crypto and things like that, he would have been all over that. And we would have had an interview kind of talking about that before it became a thing. So for a lot of reasons, I regret missing that phone call, and it haunts me to this day. I have never, like, anytime I schedule an interview now, I always say, yes, I'm available at this time, Eastern time. Like, I make sure, triple check, put it in my calendar. Like, that only had to happen to me once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely happened to me also with UK time. So that was even worse. So it was like hours later, and they're like, hello? I'm like, oh no.
Exactly. And like they would have done it over. It was just a scheduling thing. Like they were really gracious about it and really nice about it, but his schedule was really tight. He ended up doing Breakfast Club the next day, and the interview was terrible. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I could have done so much better than him wasting his time with Charlemagne. But
right. Exactly. We won't even get into that. What's one thing you love and one thing you hate about the industry?
Oh gosh, I love getting it on the ground floor and seeing artists, especially, start off, from the bottom and just take off. The same way I love watching Deja, the same way I loved watching Kendrick go from K-Dot and releasing mixtapes to winning a Pulitzer and being along for that whole ride, like as a fan and as a journalist as well. I love that about the industry. I love being plugged into the creative side of things. I hate the peopling. I am an introvert. I'm a hermit. I don't like being outside. I don't like talking to people. Anybody that knows me can attest to the fact that I'm like hard to get a hold of and hard to find if I don't want to be found. If you look at my social media, I probably post like once a week. Like, I just don't like peopling and like the social aspect of it, networking, going to mixers, wine and cheese things. Like, I don't like any of that stuff. And it's one of the main reasons why I stopped rapping, because there's a lot of peopling involved. So yeah, that's probably the thing I hate the most.
That's fair. Not peopling aside, you're doing incredible work on Marvin's Room.
Thank you.
And just talk to me about putting the show together, and also like the guidance that Amanda Paris has given you on the way too.
So Marvin's Room, putting that show together is so much fun. I love R&B. Everybody at Marvin's Room, everybody at CBC has been wonderful to work with. It turns out I love kind of talking to people about music. The listeners have been really great. I know that, that's Amanda's show and that's her audience, but they've been really receptive and have really embraced me. I know it's been, different for them because I'm different from Amanda. I put together the show a little bit differently, but they've been really receptive, and I love connecting with people on that level, like talking to them about music that I love and sharing stories behind the songs and that kind of stuff. Putting the show together. So, we curate a playlist every week, and there's a lot of different there's like an art to it and a bit of a science that goes into it. It's not just, okay, well, I like these 12 songs and that's that. You got to make sure it flows well and sounds good together. I'm always keeping my ear out for what's new so that people can, hear some new Canadian R&B especially. And then, yeah, there's a scripting element. So there's actually a lot of writing involved, which might surprise some people. So yeah, writing things and making sure that the stories that I tell are engaging and stuff that people want to hear. And then we record. And I've got my producers kind of watching me to listen and make sure that I sound natural and all that kinds of stuff. And watching for my potty mouth and that kind of thing. And then it goes to air, and it's been a lot of fun. I love sharing music with people, and I think as much as I dislike peopling, I love connecting with people in that way. If we sit down and talk about music, I'm there all day long. I might not want to do like water cooler chat and talk about your cat and stuff, but talk about music, I can do that all day. So it's been great to connect with. It's been great to connect with music lovers like across the country. That's been a really fun and rewarding experience.
Yeah, I actually want to highlight one episode in particular. I think it was my favorite one, where it was like shortly after DMX had tragically passed away. So talk about kind of like what you did special with that episode.
Yeah, so the DMX episode, I was actually recording another episode of Marvin's Room when the news came in that he had passed. And so I'm in the middle of recording and kind of see the alert go up on Twitter, and I'm like, you've got to be joking. And like, it's sad, of course, but I was not expecting to be as like devastated as I was. I'm crying during takes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm getting so emotional. Right after I recorded that one, I'm like, we got to do something. It's an R&B show though, so I'm kind of limited, right? I can't just play X for the whole, like I wanted to play X for the whole episode, but I'm like, we gotta do something to honor him because he's DMX, right? I grew up with this guy's music. So the one thing that really helped us with that episode is that he was a great lover of R&B and had a great ear. He loved all the same music that I love. And so people had been sharing memories and clips of him singing different R&B songs. And so I kind of went through them and was like, we could do this. So I picked all the songs that I picked were songs that he turned up to in life. And like, there was videos of him kind of singing. We had played like Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam, Wonder If I Take You Home. We played one of the Michael Jackson. There was a couple Michael Jackson songs. I think we ended up going with Baby Be Mine. We did Alicia Myers, I Want to Thank You. There was lots of great tracks that were kind of just given to us from DMX himself. And so we did the episode, and I did it as a regular episode, formatted it as a regular episode, took people through it and told stories and that kind of thing. But at the end, I was able to say, and if you were listening closely, these were all songs that DMX loved. I think we capped that episode with I Miss You by Aaliyah, which I thought was the perfect way to end it.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite episodes. It was near and dear. And I stick little Easter eggs and little teasers and things like that in each episode. I'm really strategic about the music that I pick and the stories that I tell. So I remember with MF Doom, we had done that as well. I think that was serendipitous. The air date for that episode was James Ingram's death anniversary, and we had just found out about MF Doom. And I just knew off the top of my head that he had sampled 100 Ways for his song Rhymes Like Dimes, which was one of my favorite Doom songs. It was the first Doom song I'd ever heard back in university. So I was like, this is perfect. This is a way that, we can still play R&B and stay true to the format of the show, but I'm a hip hop head first, right? I'm the Claire Huxtable of hip hop. So I find ways to sneak little tributes or Easter eggs or things like that into the song choices. And the DMX one was really special, that episode, special to me.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I would talk to me about like, Canadian R&B is having a moment. So, talk to me kind of about the artists that you're able to program onto the show, or even just ones you're listening to.
Oh my gosh. Like I said, Dylan Sinclair, I loved Proverb, his album Proverb, Savannah Ray, Chantel May, 1111, John Vinyl. There are tons of artists right now. Clarel out of Montreal, Callie Technis also out of Montreal. Just there's lots of variety, which I love. The hardest thing for me every week is whittling that list down to 12 songs, because there's so much selection, there's so much choice, there are so many great artists to listen to. So yeah, lots of people and lots of variety. And I like that the Canadian sound is expanding. And it's not just one thing anymore. I think there was a time where it all kind of sounded homogenous, and it all kind of sounded like we were trying to copy and emulate somewhere else. Like there was a time where we went through our own like Philly soul, neo soul type of sound, where it all kind of sounded like it was coming from Philly. But now it's kind of like we've carved our own lane. There's lots of different sounds. You can listen to like 6 different songs and not know that they're all from here, which I really like. Lots of variety, and we're really coming into our own. Lots of artists to get excited about. It's the best problem in the world to have to whittle that list down every week. I usually start with like 30 or 40 songs, and then I kind of just parse away and kind of, I'll it's like a maze almost. I'll slot things up and down and kind of move them next to each other. And then we also have to keep timing. That's another thing. So, that kind of helps me whittle things down, but I love having that problem every week. Adria Kane, Looney, lots of great stuff.
Looney.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Looney
so
is
much good stuff.
Scarborough. Yes, love it.
East End things,
Yeah.
In terms of your career, what's the most valuable lesson you say you've learned, other than telling people that you're on Eastern Standard Time?
Oh my gosh, I will. I'll never make that mistake again. Funny enough, before I got into journalism, music, emceeing, all of that stuff, my grandfather, when he was still alive, rest in peace, he told me, how you speak and how you write, always pay attention to that, and it will take you far. Take it seriously. Watch your grammar and your spelling. Don't dumb down your speech. Make sure you articulate yourself really well, and that will take you far. How you appear on paper and how you sound when you speak are really important. And, as a kid, I used to be like, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He was like a real stickler for like my penmanship and my writing. And I used to get really annoyed with him that he put so much on me. But both of those things have served me throughout my career. And in my experience, it has been my greatest calling card, because I'm not really a people person, and I don't really do the social media thing a lot, and I'm not really out there. I don't do mixers. I don't shake hands with, you know what I'm saying? I'm not out there like that. But every editor who's worked with me can tell you that they haven't had to do heavy edits on my work. I'm punctual. I'm always on time. I have a way of distilling big ideas into packets that people can understand. And that has been the main thing that sustained my career. So that is the most valuable piece of advice. And I never took it seriously as a kid. My mom used to enroll me in like speech competitions when I was younger. And I used to hate it. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're making me go up in front of the whole school and do a 3-minute speech on Coca-Cola. Like, I don't understand this, but all of it came in super handy right now. So that is the best piece of advice I've ever gotten.
I love that. Yeah, we never realize how, valuable that stuff is when you're a kid. You're like, yeah, whatever.
Yep. But it all comes into play. Yeah,
absolutely. What, so for your own advice now, what advice would you give someone that's trying to work in a Canadian media and Canadian music?
Yeah, I'd give a couple pieces of advice. The first one would be, take yourself seriously. Earlier on in my career, when I used to write for smaller blogs, that weren't getting a lot of eyes on them or weren't getting a lot of readership, and I used to be a stickler for the editing and the spelling and the penmanship, just like my grandfather taught me. And I used to be told, oh, you're taking this too seriously. It's just a blog. Like, only 200 people are going to read this. It's just a blog. You're taking it too seriously. And I'll tell you, I'm still working, and those people aren't. And that is what it is. Like, it sounds cocky and arrogant, but it is what it is. So take yourself seriously. I find the people that you deal with in this industry will only take you as seriously as you take yourself. And so if you're not showing up to things on time, or if you're sending out emails that are poorly crafted with poor spelling and grammar, or, if you say you're going to release your album on such and such a date and you don't, or you don't follow up with people, or you don't deliver things when you say you're going to, you're going to get out exactly what you put into this. So yeah, take yourself seriously for sure. And Don't be afraid to carve your own lane. I find in this industry, a lot of people are looking at what other people are doing and trying to emulate and trying to, copy what this person's doing or copy this person's sound or blah, blah, blah. But every person, whether behind the scenes or in front of the camera, every person who's like made it and was super successful carved their own lane and did it their own way. Jay-Z was the first Jay-Z. Kendrick was the first Kendrick. And then you'll often see a bunch of little copycats after that, but the one who started it all is the one who remains. So don't be afraid to carve your own lane. You can take other people's advice and things like that, or look at their career path and take some of it with a grain of salt, but create your own opportunities. I definitely created my own opportunities in this industry. There's room in it for everybody to eat and everybody to have. So just carve your own lane and don't be afraid to go left when everybody else is going right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good advice. As soon as you said, Jay-Z was the first Jay-Z, made me think of that line. Motherfucker said they made Hove.
Make another Hove.
Exactly.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think that's excellent advice. On that note, that was my last question that I had. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and share some of your story. You said you're not out here shaking hands and kissing babies. So this is the only way we can catch A Harmony in her natural storytelling element. But yeah, no, I like I said, I think you do amazing work on Marvin's Room, and I'm just excited for more people to get familiar with your work.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So again, yeah, thanks so much for chatting to us, and thanks for everyone watching.